4 friends. We have 4 friends in our hearts waiting to do our bidding. But we also have enemies sitting there waiting to jump out at any given moment. They are never at rest, see chapter 6. The problem is that we are not diligent enough to throw out the enemies and only cultivate our friends. To cultivate one's friends is a natural and sensible thing to do. Yet there is a lack of clarity in people's minds as to how to judge this in themselves. Our friends are the 4 divine abidings: loving kindness, compassion, joy with others, and equanimity. These have to be searched for in our own hearts. When we find them lacking in ourselves and know this is to our own detriment, we begin doing something about their development.
Loving kindness. Words are dangerous. They give an illusion of permanence. We are fed with words, but they are nothing but concepts. They are not real. Imagine a river. The word river can't proclaim the reality of flowing water. The word river is static. The essential quality of a river is that it flows. Loving kindness can never exist unless it flows from the heart. As long as it's just embedded in a word, it is nothing, it is worthless. It doesn't mean anything on its own, in the same way that the word river is only a description that one has to experience in order to know it. If you say to a small child, river, it won't know what you are talking about. But if you put the child's hand in the water and let it feel the flow, then the child knows what a river is, whether it is familiar with the word or not.
The same goes for loving kindness. The word is meaningless. Only when you feel it flowing from your own heart will you get an idea what the Buddha talked about in so many discourses. Life cannot be lived fully unless it's lived with both heart and mind. If one lives with one's heart only, one is prone to emotionalism, a very common error, not strictly confined to females but very much practiced by them. Emotionalism means reacting to everything, and that doesn't work. The mind has its rightful place. One has also to understand what is happening. Yet if one only understands well, one may be intellectually advanced, but the heart is not engaged. Both must go hand in hand, heart and mind together. One has to understand, and one has to use one's emotions positively, emotions that are fulfilling and bring a feeling of peacefulness and harmony to one's own heart.
Loving kindness or love, whichever word has meaning for you, is not an emotion resulting from the presence of a lovable person, or because one is with one's family or children, or because somebody is worthy of love. That utilitarian and instinctive reaction has nothing to do with this kind of love. Practically everybody can react in that way. It's not very difficult to love one's own children. Most people manage. It is also not terribly difficult to love one's own parents. Some people can't even do that, though most people manage. But that's not the meaning of metta or loving kindness. When the Buddha talks about loving kindness, he talks about a quality of the heart that makes no distinction between any living being. The highest aspiration mentioned in the loving kindness discourse, see chapter 8, is that one should love all beings just as a mother loves her only child. Those of you with children know the feeling you have for your children and can tell the difference. How do you feel about your own children and how do you feel about other people? That is the work one has to do. Unless one is willing to purify oneself until all beings are considered as though one's own children, one hasn't understood loving kindness and its importance.
If you see a small child who has fallen off a bicycle and is crying, it will be natural to pick it up and console it. That's loving kindness, but not very difficult. The difficulty lies in generating that feeling in one's heart toward all people, most of whom are not terribly lovable. None of us is perfectly lovable. Only an arahant is. Since we ourselves are not perfectly lovable, why do we expect it of others? Why do we make such distinctions between those we care to love and those we don't love? We think we are justified in not loving those who are not acting in a way we consider proper. Nobody acts in the right way all the time, including each one of us. If you give it a moment's thought, we have all made mistakes in our lives. Even though I don't know your lives, I can be quite sure by looking at my own. Everybody has made mistakes, so why expect others to be perfect if we can't do it ourselves?
There are 3 grades, so to speak, of loving kindness. The first one we might call goodwill. We have goodwill toward each other. It is the primary requirement for living together. If we did not have goodwill for each other, we couldn't even meditate together. We would get up and walk about. We would make a noise when everybody was quiet. No country can exist if people don't have goodwill for each other. Have you ever considered how dependent we all are on one another? We are dependent upon the postman to deliver letters, upon the vegetable and fruit seller and the rice farmer for our food, the municipal government for water. We are dependent upon the goodwill of our neighbors. Because goodwill is an essential requirement for survival, all manage it most of the time. When it breaks down, we have chaos.
The next grade of loving kindness we might call friendship. We feel friendly toward a certain group of people, our friends, our neighbors, people we know, or someone who does us a favor. Friendliness is a step toward loving kindness, but it isn't real loving kindness yet. It is a quality that is endearing to the heart and endears other people to us. But it has the near enemy of love embedded in it, namely affection. Although we think of affection as something positive, it has attachment in it. Attachment to our friends and associates, to those who help us, to those who live with us. That attachment creates hate, not toward the people we are attached to, but toward the idea that they might be lost. There is fear, and we can only fear what we hate. Therefore the purity of love is lost. The attachment makes it impure and thus less satisfying. No total fulfillment can be found. This is what happens within the family. That is why there is always unsatisfactoriness in that kind of love.
The love one has for one's family can be used as a seedbed to experience the feeling of lovingness. Then one can cultivate it, make it grow, spread it further. Only then does family love have its proper significance. Otherwise it becomes a hotbed of emotions, as it so often is, like a boiling kettle with the lid on. The loving feeling in the family must be used to cultivate that true feeling of loving kindness in one's heart, which is not dependent on conditions, such as my husband, my wife, my daughter, my son, my uncle, my aunt, my mother, my father. That is all my making and mine making. Unless we can transcend that and grow into unconditional love, the family love has not been used for its full purpose. It has been used for ego support and survival instead. Since survival is a lost cause, it doesn't need our effort. Atom bomb or not, we are not going to survive. There is only one place where we are all going to, where we will all meet.
Our friendships are beset with the same difficulty, namely attachment. We are attached to our friends. We don't want to lose them. We are nice to them so that they will remain our friends. If they are not equally nice back to us, we immediately consider whether we should remain friends. We want the same friendship back, the same consideration and care. It turns into a commercial enterprise. I give something and I want the same value back. This is what most people do so naturally that we don't even think about it. It happens with our friends, but even more so with our loved ones. If they don't love us back, we feel bereft, desolate, depressed. If they should leave, then love seems to be lost. Isn't it absurd that love should be embedded in one other person, or two or three?
Love cannot be encased in a person. A person is nothing but a bag of bones with 32 parts in it surrounded by skin, see page 53. How can love be embedded in that? Yet that is what the famous tragedies are all about. Romeo and Juliet or Gone with the Wind are dramas about someone leaving, someone not being interested, about separation through death. People are bound to leave, either through death or through changing their mind and their feelings. Whether they ought to or not is not the question. How can love be embedded in one or two such persons? Love is embedded in a feeling. If one hasn't used family love in order to expand and enlarge this feeling, then one is bound to experience a trauma when one's attachment disappears for some reason. The primary purpose of family love is getting to know the loving feeling and then working with it.
Working with it isn't confined to a 10-day meditation course or when one chants the loving kindness discourse. Neither mind nor heart can be turned on and off like light switches. They need systematic training with patience and determination. The heart needs training because by nature it isn't constituted to always feel loving kindness. By nature it contains both love and hate. It contains ill will, rejection, resentment and fear, and also lovingness. But unless we diminish the hate and enlarge the love by doing something about it in our daily life, we have no chance of experiencing that peaceful feeling that loving kindness generates in the heart.
Having love in one's heart, unconditional love for others, creates security in the heart. One knows how one is going to react. One can rely on oneself. One is totally reliable, having no fear. One knows that one is trained to the point where there isn't going to be any reaction of hate or anger, not even a little, to mar one's peacefulness. That is the first and foremost great result of having cultivated loving kindness in one's heart. Love is most importantly cultivated and we confront someone who is totally unlovable. That's the time when we can really do the work of changing heart and mind. We are forced to it. Most of us know someone who is difficult to love. We should be grateful for that. In retrospect, it is easy to be grateful, but when we confront that person, all the negative sides arise in the heart: dislike, hate, justification for our dislike and hate, rationalization, anger. The time to be loving is when all the negative feelings arise. It is the best time for it.
It is a great pity to have such an opportunity and not make use of it. If you have nobody unlovable in your life right now, use everybody, every living being is a learning situation for lovingness, no matter who they are, what they do, what they believe. It doesn't matter what they say, whether they are interested in you or whether they have any loving kindness themselves. None of that counts. The only thing that matters is one's own heart, and that is the one thing to remember. If my heart can become loving and accepting, if I can cause my heart to have no anger, no resentment, then I have taken a great step on the Dhamma path. The Dhamma has to be understood, digested, and lived.
Everyone has the opportunity to work on their responses to others. Everybody meets people all the time, and always there are some who do not agree with them. If one clamps one's mouth shut and doesn't say anything, that doesn't create any loving kindness. All it creates is resentment, suppression, worry, or it may result in indifference. None of that is helpful or purifying. The great result of being reliable and secure within oneself can only come when one knows one is going to respond in the fullness of one's heart. The Buddha spoke about 11 benefits that come from loving kindness. The first 3 are: 1 goes to sleep happily, 1 dreams no evil dreams, and 1 wakes happily. If anybody has difficulty falling asleep, you can be sure it is because of a lack of loving kindness, and sleeping pills don't answer this problem. Lovingness does. Then the subconscious also doesn't act in an unpleasant way, so there are no evil dreams, no nightmares, and one wakes with the same feeling that one had on going to bed, namely the same loving thoughts toward all beings, as one had the previous day.
It's useful to make a balance sheet at night. It can be just in the mind, but it can also be in writing if you are inclined that way. Make a balance sheet. How often have I felt lovingness toward another person today? On the other side of the sheet put, how often have I felt anger, hurt, resentment, rejection, fear, anxiety today, when confronting other people? Then total it up, and if the balance is on the debit side, make a resolution to change it. Every good shopkeeper makes a balance sheet at the end of the day, and if his merchandise doesn't have good customer acceptance, obviously he will change it. It's a skill. It's not an inbred character fault or ability. It's a skill to change oneself again and again until all impurities have been cleansed. It's not because other people are so lovable. They're not. If they were, they'd be roaming around in the God realms. They wouldn't be down here. This is the 5th realm from the bottom in a cosmology of 31 realms. If we are in class 5 from the